if you can build it here, you can build it anywhere.
50% of the land doesn't have sewer service, right?
Okay, if I build one on wheels, what are my hurdles? If I build one without wheels, what are my hurdles? What's local code requirement gonna drive me towards?
You could be 60 years old, and you want to move your parents into an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, right? I mean, they have to go over the same hurdles as a 20-year-old that doesn't want to have the lifestyle. I need, 2,000 square feet and a huge loan to deal with for the rest of my life.
You want a different lifestyle? It's not a tiny house podcast. Like, it's important, that you use things that affect you as education versus just being pissed off. Me. Like, I'm talking to myself, right? Like, Don't just be mad. Don't just, be defensive or whatever, but welcome the idea that, yeah, dude, right, wrong, or otherwise, if you get your finger caught in a trap and it hurt, then just don't do that again, and figure out that there were a lot of decisions that led you to put that finger in that trap, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't one and you weren't fooled. You put it in there willingly. Either you convinced yourself or somebody helped you convince yourself, or whatever the fuck it was, or money told you to do it. You need to be careful that they're all traps every time there's money involved, in my opinion, today. Moving forward, this is not how we're starting the podcast.
No.
What are you looking at me like that?
I don't know. I'm just thinking about something else.
What are you thinking about?
Bloom's taxonomy of learning.
Okay.
Yeah, you familiar?
I'm not enough to where I can't let you talk about it now.
Okay, well, Jeremy and I were talking about it, and this was honors, classes. We had to actually do every step, and you got to do it in order. So
say the name of it again.
Bloom's taxonomy of learning. Anyway, there's multiple levels, and knowledge is just the first level. Right. So I think that's where most people stop. Right? You start with knowledge, like, hey, I know about this or that, whatever else. Well, then you have to understand, right? Yep. So it goes up to actual, analysis.
Sure.
So people never get to the analysis stage. So all these people who are like, oh, this thing happened, and their analysis of the world did it to me, right?
Versus your involvement in the world. And that, that goes all the way into the Stoicism versions of philosophy too, right? Like, your actions created a result.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as
long as you're willing to accept that all the things that happen to you at some level are your responsibility.
Yep.
You can't control everything, but
no,
it's your responsibility, and everybody else is just like, nope, wasn't me.
You got to be a participant in your life. And that means you have to understand, like, if let's just say you're talking about playing Mario, if you jump into the hole, you're the guy who hit A or B or whatever the hell it was, right?
No, man. No.
No, it moved there.
I told it what to do. The control failed.
Before we... the controller wasn't
sticky.
Plugged in.
It's sticky.
Before we chase this rabbit...
It's not because I'm eating donuts while I'm playing. That's not why it's sticky.
We were always drunk playing Mario. That was the only way we would let ourselves warp. But that's another story for another time.
Me, I bought the book and I just won the game and moved on.
See? What fun is that? If you're only here to conquer, not to play,
I'm here to win.
Something Thanos or whatever from that movie we just watched. That being said, and now everything's been tested, I think we can probably jump into
an actual podcast.
Jump into the actual podcast, which
has no title.
Which has a title.
Kind of. Which one are we doing?
It's a working title. I think that we're going to run with it's not a tiny house podcast, right?
Now is it? It's not a tiny house podcast.
It's a podcast.
So is the podcast part of the name,
right,
or is it just what it is?
Okay, let me narrow that back in and rein it in. It's not a tiny house, which is a podcast about tiny houses that are not technically in your traditional sense of what a tiny house is. This is like traditional old cabin in a modern world.
Yeah, it's not on wheels.
It's not on wheels.
So the reason it's not a tiny house podcast is because
it's
tiny
actual
houses.
House. Yeah.
People think it's something on wheels that people are going to pull into a neighborhood and ruin it, right? So there's a reason for that, is because the reason a tiny house is on wheels is because then you have to comply with no code.
Exactly, right? So you're an RV, right? And why we are here is to talk about what makes it a tiny house. Initially, what we're here to talk about, right, is to talk about the changes that we need to see moving forward if someone were to be interested in and appealed to by the tiny house movement, the RV movement, the mobile, the nomadic gig worker movement, all of these various things. And you have to realize that you obviously still need to live somewhere. We are here to work towards an informal education, which allows you to kind of be that shade tree person who knows how to figure out housing on a smaller scale. So if you don't want to take out $250,000 and have a house that you don't spend time in, you got to cook, you got to clean it, you got to heat it and cool it, and you want a different lifestyle, this is a version of education that's going to be a little bit, like I said, informal. This is people who are doing it are in the middle of it.
Informal as in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Fighting that fight every day.
Fighting
and
that
going
fight.
to everything from city council to, suppliers to figure out what you can and cannot afford this month because prices change or whatever.
Yeah.
Like down to the nitty-gritty details, not just, oh, we built a pretty cabin and look how nice it is.
And that's it, right? So it's part of the issues and part of the information is going to come out of motivation from, okay, if I build one on wheels, what are my hurdles? If I build one without wheels, what are my hurdles? What's local code requirement going to drive me towards? How do I navigate local government? How do I deal with building inspection? How do I deal with the various levels of material procurement, if you will, and the variables that are actually inside of that business and inside of the business of construction in general. And because of our experiences thus far, who we are and what we bring to the table, you may or may not choose to listen, right? So my partner on our current project, Barna, we each have our own history, our own credentials, past successes, past failures.
I was going to say you're going to actually introduce yourself to
and
what
then
your
myself,
name is.
right? And I'm Wyatt, right? Wyatt Reed. So
Well,
again,
I'm going to use this line, but I have a last name too. I just can't pronounce it. But that's that's straight out of First Fast and the Furious.
right? Okay. now we're doing Fast and Furious references, right?
We are
right. So who we are, right? Why you're going to maybe want to participate and listen, or why you're not. You might be interested in who we are, what we bring to the table. You very well may not. I mean, if you're not, go enjoy, what did I call that show earlier? I don't even know the name of it. The Walking Dead. And go about your life inside your mini mansion, and it's going to be great.
I think you said Living Dead. Right?
The Living Dead. I call it Living
yeah.
Dead because I don't watch TV, guys. I don't have a television to know what the actual titles of shows. Right. TV is so old school.
I have 3 TVs right
exactly.
now.
Well, you're
Yeah.
old.
That's part of it. That's part
Older
of it.
than me. No, I
Yeah.
mean, not by much.
Yeah.
But so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about who we're going to benefit, right? If this is a podcast that's going to be driven towards a younger demographic of people that are facing student loan debt, credit card debt, car payments, a work situation that may be ever changing, or we're going to talk about how that relates to a generation of, let's just say, our parents, who then can help understand our life, our struggles, the things that we've learned thus far, the things we'd like to change and see differently in the future. And we're going to talk about our initial content as well. So that's kind of a basic rundown.
Yeah, well, we're also helping anybody that wants to do anything related to building,
Right.
housing,
Right.
in today's small town, big city, whatever. So it helps them. You could be 60 years old.
Yep.
And you want to move your parents into an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, right? I mean, they have to go over the same hurdles as a 20-year-old
Exactly.
that doesn't want to have the lifestyle. I need 2,000 square feet
Yep.
and a huge loan to deal with for the rest of my life.
Right. And so, we'll do the nuts and bolts stuff, but, for those wanting in the first few minutes to figure out what they're going to learn about as we
Yeah.
move forward, so you can decide now if it's interesting, or you can, cut bait and walk away. With that, obviously, now that we're going to talk about our informal education changes that we need to see, and let's go into who we are, a little bit about our history on why, you may or may not want to participate in something like this. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
I don't want to go first. You just
I'll go
keep
first.
going.
Okay. So
I don't even know why I'm here. Right
Yeah.
now.
So, history, credentials, past successes and failures. Again, I'm Wyatt, for those who aren't, watching this, so you can't tell who the hell's who. This is my voice. History, born and raised northern Minnesota, started in construction and carpentry around the age of 14. I'm a rural, small farm town kid from, I call it the middle of nowhere, but it's the only region in Minnesota without a natural lake. So think farmland, think ice hockey, and that's basically where it all started. Credentials, I started in this when I was like 14. I had a friend of mine whose dad was a general contractor, who I've had the benefit of doing a lot of work for over the years. He took us in as kids. we started pushing a broom. I think I can still remember the first time it was like, hey, throw your tool belt on, put a hammer in it, because we actually got to participate in the build, climbing around in rafters, building houses from 14 all the way through high school every summer, all the way through college every summer, and then very short stint using my bachelor's degree that I paid way too much money for, right back into construction for my adult career, with one other stopover, doing some T-shirts, trying my hand in business, made some designs, did some T-shirts, saw some success there, but moved around the country and failed every step along the way at some varying degree, right? Something didn't work. I didn't think about it well enough. I didn't build my plan well enough. Now we're here with a ton of stuff that has failed, at least in my head, is how to make stuff and how to build stuff. So I know how not to do a lot of things, and we're learning every day how to do more and more and more things. Like we've talked about in the first few minutes, this is a real-time education podcast about what we're talking and learning about now, especially when it comes to how to navigate projects that are a little bit more current in the building landscape. Things like small houses, small structures, and how to get stuff done. So that's what I bring to the table. There is one other fun success that I had, and I have to talk about it a little bit, because I decided at one point I was going to build a house 100% out of pallet wood and pallets. And I put that up in northern Minnesota, and I watched it all winter not fall over and actually work and hold together. And I was like, this is pretty cool. If I added a few other elements to it, there are ways to build things that people aren't even thinking about. And we can accomplish a ton of stuff with a lot of creativity and a hell of a lot more hard work. That's who I am, which is the guy that likes to just show up, hands in the mud, and build stuff. So with that, Barna can tell us about himself, and then we'll move on to what we're going to do with this thing, or who we're talking to.
My name is Barna Casa. I'm from a small town, and that's where I moved back to retire for the third time.
Right.
It didn't work out either time, and it didn't stick, like 5 years ago. So anyway, I'm from a tiny town in a socialist country. I loved capitalism before I knew what it was. So I'm not the builder. Why it is, I build businesses. I currently have 6, and this is a semi-new venture with Wyatt to build. Well, we have several projects going on.
Right.
on smaller houses. One is currently a hotel that we're building out of shipping containers, but we worked together on a couple other projects beforehand.
So what we've got here is what I would consider me to be an entrepreneurial thinker. And you've got Barna more specifically as an entrepreneurial actor, right? Like he knows how to actually execute, start the business, build the business.
Somebody has to.
Yeah, somebody has to, right? Like I'm way too harebrained for this stuff, and I'm like, just give me some wood and some saws and shit, and I'm cool. But he'll help educate us all on the nuts and bolts of the business portion of how this stuff really needs to operate and work, especially if you're going to consider what we're really working towards, which are larger picture kind of things. We're talking about development.
Yeah. I do the boring stuff. Let's find the septic engineer and the surveyor. And
I'm like, what?
Work on let's get the numbers. Let's get the marketing plan together, and just the boring stuff that nobody really thinks about when they go after a passion project. Like, I want to do this, and here's the problems I want to solve. It's like, cool. How are you going to do that? Right. Well, I got some hammers, right?
I got some hammers. I bought some wood.
I bought some 2x4s, and I happen to have a shipping container.
Or for me, I found a pack of pallets, because that's what I had access to, and I had all the other stuff, and that's how that started.
I just like buying stuff, so I'm just like, I bought a couple acres in Florence. I bought several properties in this area after I quote-unquote retired, and almost lost my mind after 6 months. So built a vacation rental business out of a vintage mobile home park. It was 5 units, and it was basically ready to be scraped. Brought those all back from the dead. Really like to enjoy the design process of it, and doing something nobody else has done.
Yep.
So that's also the challenge was also part of it. I mean, we could have done easier things. Right?
We've talked about that. We could have done things a ton easier, and that's another thing, and it's a perfect segue for who we're going to benefit, right? We're going to benefit people that are like, don't have not necessarily the gas in the tank, but the time maybe, or expertise, or the confidence to send this stuff forward and really stand up in front of a group of strangers and be like, hey, I got a new idea. And who are going to benefit is people that are really looking for alternative housing opportunities, and also those that can be made less expensively, right? So I think it's a great thing where we're gonna talk about the benefits, right? Who are going to benefit. I think personally, it originally was made to benefit me, right? Solve your own problem first. That's one of the books. That's one of the things that you're going to read in all the entrepreneurial books. First, scratch your own itch, right? I needed a house, but I couldn't get a payment plan. I couldn't get a mortgage for it because I'm a small business owner that doesn't have a ton of history, and I don't have a job technically, right? So, but I'm a builder. So I needed a house that I could build affordably for myself, and it needed to have the opportunity to move. It needed to have the opportunity for space. I needed some storage. So a tiny house, traditional tiny house on wheels was out of the picture because I have tools as a carpenter. I can't live inside that trailer size thing. I can't move any of that shit around. So we built and designed a new housing style using some of the same old tricks, right? So you got shipping containers involved, you got traditional stick-built stuff involved, you've got SIP panel construction involved, and anybody that is looking for an alternative housing style where they can, if they choose to, save some money, they're going to benefit. So that could be a millennial that's a fresh out of college, lives single, or Gen Xer or Y. I don't even know at this point where we are, what letter. But Z, sure, get those guys in there. Are we starting back over at A soon? What are we going to do? Or is it Z, A1? It doesn't matter. Like,
or do numbers.
If they're like, I need a bedroom with a cooktop, a bed, shower, and a bathroom, cool. Like, that doesn't cost, what a traditional house is going to cost, right?
Well, and that's part of the issue right now is a traditional house, even in small town Colorado, you're looking at $300,000.
Yeah.
And who can afford that? And that also drives up rental prices, because now if I'm an investor and I buy a $300,000 house,
right,
I got to rent that out for $3,000 a month to cover my mortgage and all my taxes and insurance and all the other stuff. So who can afford $3,000 a month for rent when, there's a solution, and literally your barriers are nothing more than a couple words in the city code.
In the tax,
right? So city code says minimum square footage 856, right?
Right.
So, or whatever that number is, could be 1,500 if you're inside an HOA or whatever, right? So there's a number in your local code that prevents you doing from what you want to do and what's perfectly fine for you, and that gets you where you want to go. But there's a group of people who are pulling the strings, and part of this podcast is to let you know that you are one of those people. Yeah. All you have to do is show up.
No, like your lack of involvement is allowing them to yank a string that you would rather not, right? Let them have. So by showing up, being diligent, going to bat for yourself inside of local government conversations, to work on housing code, to work on these various things. And that's the important approach to this, is that you just have to start somewhere. But before we finish, like, who it benefits? It could be the younger person that literally says what I said earlier, or needs what I said earlier, right? A bedroom that has, the pedigree of this, or an older person too. The in-law suites are a big topic of conversation. We call them ADUs, accessory dwelling units, that are a subservient small living unit to a larger structure. So if mom and dad have a house, you park your ADU, quote unquote, in the backyard, you hook it up, you have your own independent housing unit. Now, certain codes certain areas have restrictions, so you need to figure out what that code reads, how to navigate some of that stuff, and what we're really talking about too for our larger project is essentially having a community of ADU size housing, right?
Yeah,
big picture,
and there's multiple ways to accomplish that, depending on what your city code is.
Right.
But we're still fighting that fight.
We're still fighting.
But
so the best part there is that, like, we're going to proactively show a couple of different options and models for how this can be accomplished. What it really boils down to is you're going to have to do some work if you're that interested in it to figure out your local code, but we can show you and talk about how we found it in our local code and how we navigated it, so that you can kind of see same but different. right? Where to look and what to do.
Yeah, and that's going to be part of this podcast as well. As in the show notes, we'll provide you with all the information that we have. So we know where our local code is, and there's a couple major websites that have that, or what website you need to go to actually buy the nationwide code book. What is it called? The IRC or
IRC International Residential Code. You got IRC, you got IECC, which is your energy codes, and then you've got commercial code.
That's all a book stuff you can buy.
Yeah,
right. You
seriously
go to a website, you buy that book, or you go online and you find your local code. You search it.
Yep.
You will help with what sections you or what words you got to use. But we'll also have information on the reports you can use to back up what you want to do.
Yeah.
So you need some facts to back up your wishes.
Yep.
And we'll help provide all that.
And also what's important here is that right? We are not in a major city. We're not in San Francisco. We're not in Denver. We're not in a major municipality where so many people believe change starts and takes place. We are in rural, low population, middle America. So
population 4,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's 4,000 people in the town, right? So I guess what we're saying too there is like, don't get bogged down on the fact that you're not in a super progressive, super populated area. We're in a very conservative corner of Colorado, if you will. And we can do it here. You can do it there. And you're going to have, I'm not going to tell you that you're going to have a 100% blueprint, but you're going to have a napkin sketch of how to actually accomplish this shit and make a difference in your local community, so that all those kids that left after high school and went and got their college degrees and maybe wanted to move back to a rural area, you might be able to be the person that provides an opportunity for them to do that. And that's really what's really going to make your small town thrive, just like we can make ours do the same.
So we're rolling into this automatically, right? That
No, I mean,
all the opportunities that are actually available in small towns,
it's unreal.
Where everybody goes like, oh, small towns, can't make it here, I got to move to the big city. No, you don't.
And that's
I lived in big cities. I lived in Memphis, Columbus. I lived in Denver. Yeah, there's opportunities there. There's probably about 10 times the opportunity in a small town.
Agreed.
There's lack of competition.
Yep.
So you can basically start any business in a small town like Florence.
Yeah.
Because there's just nobody else doing it.
Dude,
or everybody's retired, or like I started this business and there's nobody else doing it, so I can charge whatever I want and I can show up whenever I want. You're not going to go anywhere else because there is nobody else.
No.
So opportunities are plenty.
They're abundant off the top of
government is accessible, right?
Yep.
You just walk into City Hall.
Yeah, you walk in, you make your appointments, you talk to who you need to talk to. You got to keep in mind, like right now, you got to look at the landscape of business owners today, right? They're aging out. So in not that many years, you're going to have an opportunity to own your own business in a small town a hell of a lot easier than trying to do it at $3,000 a month to start your own business in a major city also, right? So economically, you got an opportunity just in that. But also, like Barna said, just go to a small town and go, man, this town really needs X, and start the business. You can do that. Today we have access to information. We have access to all kinds of stuff, not to mention, like he said, our government officials. You can actually access them in a smaller town because there are fewer people. They got less going on, truthfully.
And really, local laws have a bigger impact on your life than federal laws.
100%.
But nobody pays attention. And that's part of the problem.
Right.
Like before we showed up, right? Before we started showing up to every single meeting, who was there? What is the demographic that was being represented? And the demographic is typically rich, white, old, right? And they're retired because they have time to show up. I mean, it's definitely a time investment.
Folks that have bought their time, right? And rightfully so. But yeah, what we noticed that there were no 30s and 40s. There were very few 50s, somethings, inside of these meetings because they're
zero 20s.
Zero 20s.
Zero 20s, yeah.
Guys, kids, jobs, X, Y, and Z. Like, there's a reason for it. What I'm saying is that if you don't get involved, you can't pull the string, right? And that's a really, really important thing. And so I want to finish this one real quick with like the initial content that we're gonna bridge into, and we're gonna do this in chapters, right? So we've touched on how there are business opportunities in small towns. There's a whole host of conversations to be had, but the first 2 to 10 podcasts that you're gonna hear from us are gonna focus on and drive mostly around housing. jobs, economy, local government navigation, overcoming new ideas that you might be bringing to this area. And that's going to be packaged inside of the first thing. So we're going to keep ourselves between the ditches, so to speak, on that topic of conversation.
We'll try.
We're going to try. There are going to be some rabbit holes. We're going to chase it. But it's important to understand, in the first 2 to 10, you're going to get where we are up to date current with our obstacles for a project inside of rural America, building smaller, more affordable housing, and how that affects the jobs and the economy, what you can bring, and how to navigate your local government so that you know who to talk to, how to talk to them, how to present your ideas inside of that room, and how to make sure that you're diligent and follow up on
And who you need.
And who you
right?
Yeah,
who you need in your corner, and
Guys,
how to get them in your corner, all that too.
And
right?
everybody,
it's not just you show up by yourself or I got all this, right?
And you don't show up once.
So,
and
you need some other people backing up with credentials, and that might cost a couple bucks or partnerships. But it's also not just about building one tiny house or one ADU. We're talking about going from what we actually did, or you did, going from a prototype. Well, yeah, we're doing multiple prototypes right now. Going from a prototype, proving that prototype working, and then expanding that into a small scale project, but all the way up to 40 plus units. So we're gonna get into everything from we're building affordable housing apartments.
Right.
We're building single family homes that are 300 square feet, and then we're building 300. We're building single family homes that are 1,500 square feet, if we get to that point, or if that's what the market demands.
Yep, and how what we've kind of compiled at this point from a design concept on how traditional housing does not equate to where we are, what we were bringing to the table from a design concept. Right? We got to stroke our own stuff. We've come up with some stuff that other people haven't yet. But they'll see it, they'll learn about it. We'll figure out how this can work, and that's part of the next 2 to 10 is overcoming those new ideas and making sure that people are understanding that new is progressive, new is not bad, new is not scary, new is taking an old idea and adding a new trick. And that's what we're good at.
I was just going to throw that in there. That what is old is new again, right? So you go hey, we're doing a shipping container house. Right. Well, go to Pueblo, take the Central City exit, go east, and what do you have? An entire neighborhood made out of train cars. Right? Same size as a shipping container, pretty much. So an entire neighborhood built out of train cars. So let's not pretend that you do not have a template to go from, or this is a historically super new thing that you want to live on smaller square footage. That's what people had. I mean, the property I have,
the railroad housing for sure,
railroad subdivisions, right? So I actually had to join all the lots together to make it go with the current code, because the old railroad lots were designed for somebody to throw down a train car and turn into a house.
Right. So
and now that's not allowed, right?
Now that's not allowed. We've changed all that.
Well, the entire town is based upon. We're not going to do that.
We're not going to jump into that one at the end of this. We're going to just leave you with the idea that
we'll cut that out.
Yeah, we're cutting that part. Well, we don't need to cut it out. But here, the initial content, who we are, what we're bringing to the table, what you're going to listen and hear. That's what this initial podcast was about. And I think we've accomplished what we're gonna push forward on. We're gonna erase the whiteboard and hit podcast number 2. We still have to figure out some of the finer bullet points on exactly where we're gonna start with this for you. But now you know what to expect if you made it all the way through this podcast. So thanks for checking in.
Hold on, we got to do one more thing. We need a word soup for Sage at the end that he can edit together for things we might have in the future. So that means follow us, like us, share, subscribe. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or wherever you consume your podcast.